See, I thought Bob Ferguson cared about protecting our democracy, but he doesn't. He does when it's advantageous for him politically, like if he can talk about Donald Trump being an existential threat to our democracy. But coming out and telling the voters and ensuring voters who support initiatives he doesn't, that they're going to have a chance to vote on those because that's our democratic process. Well, no, he can't say anything about that. I can't have people know that I'm obliged to defend these initiatives, and I can't be sitting here talking about that. So just to catch people up, if you're not familiar, apparently, unbeknownst to us, there had been a lawsuit working its way through the court system challenging the validity of how the Secretary of State counted signatures on the Let's Go Washington initiatives. So the lawsuit was brought by a group called Defend Washington, uber-left progressive group who is opposed to all the initiatives. And it was against the Secretary of State's office, not Let's Go Washington, because again, it's challenging how the Secretary of State validated signatures. So because of that, Let's Go Washington was just left completely in the dark until last Friday at around noon, when they were notified that the state Supreme Court, in a matter of hours, would be deciding on a lawsuit that could put the initiatives in jeopardy. And the only reason they found out about it is a reporter had just happened to find out about it that day and called them for comment. And they're like, excuse me, what's going on? So ever since then, and I think we've been the lead on this, we have been demanding to know why the Attorney General's office didn't inform Let's Go Washington of this threat to the initiatives, or didn't put out a press release saying there's this lawsuit against the initiatives, but we are going to defend them with everything that we've got. They were silent about it. So much so that no one in the media, Let's Go Washington, the initiative sponsors, they were totally blindsided. So anyway, I blame the Attorney General. I blame Attorney General Bob Ferguson. And we've been pretty hard on him the last few days. His office has emailed us saying we're not being fair, we're being intentionally misleading. Well, now he's on the defensive. I've never seen him on the defensive like this. I mean, there's been scandal after scandal that I thought should have stuck with him that just didn't, like him asking the Secretary of State to break election law on his behalf. But this time, and he barely ever comments. Like, people will go after him and he doesn't say anything. Good for him. But now he released a 7-part post on X defending himself. I really think it's about me, but he refuses to say my name. I don't know what's up. He's always refused, like he'll like vaguely, like, you know, he's referring to me in campaign things.
Like he doesn't want to give you the satisfaction.
He doesn't want to give me the satisfaction, or he knows I'm very popular with the middle. I think I am.
Yeah.
And so he's like, well, I can't alienate them because I can't attack Brandi. That's not a popular target.
You're on his list, so he has to just get under your skin.
It doesn't get under my skin. It gives me great joy. It gives
me
great joy.
Get under your skin.
Because he said some partisans are trying to create a fake conspiracy by accusing the Attorney General's office of keeping secret a lawsuit that sought to invalidate several initiatives. And then he goes into 6 more parts of this tweet explaining why this wasn't secret. This wasn't secret by any stretch of the imagination. But nothing he has said since news broke about this on Friday, nothing he has said addresses the underlying point I've made, which is even if you don't have a legal obligation to inform the backers of the initiatives that there's a lawsuit that threatens those initiatives, you have a moral obligation as the Attorney General of Washington State, as a public servant. You have a moral obligation to do it, and you chose not to do it. You made a decision not to do it. And he's put out, you know, he's trying to push back against this argument that he kept this a secret. He's like, no, we didn't keep it a secret. We told all these other people, but again, they never told the group that mattered most, Let's Go Washington. So I just want to, he's now given 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7-part tweet, 7 different excuses. He's now given 7 different excuses as to why it's not fair to accuse him of keeping this a secret from Let's Go Washington. So this varies from like in emails to us to social media posts. In an email to us, his office said, and this was like their first excuse that came out, well, our role in this case was as legal counsel to the defendant, the Secretary of State's office. So suggesting like we were legal counsel for the Secretary of State's office, not Let's Go Washington. So like we don't have an obligation to them. And then they said this, and they said this in their legal briefs as well. Well, generally, the party bringing the motion has the responsibility to notify relevant parties. So now they're saying, well, that was the plaintiff's responsibility, defend Washington, not ours. They have the legal obligation. But again, still doesn't address my underlying concern, which is, didn't you have a moral obligation as a public servant? And then Bob took to Twitter and he started to change his story and try to convince people like, no, like this was public the whole time. He said, let me be clear, this case was public every step of the way. Supreme Court dockets are published. Yeah, he actually then turned to the argument that we should have known about it because we should have been perusing Supreme Court dockets. And they're published online, and we should have just proactively been doing that to see if there was a lawsuit that we hadn't heard about that had been going on for 6 months about the initiatives. So that's ridiculous, and that didn't stick either, because that's just a blatantly absurd thing to say. And then he goes on to say, well, okay, but we provided multiple briefings to the legislature about this case since February. We briefed senior legislative staff of both parties, including staff for the House and Senate Republicans. All right, let's assume that's true. What I do know is that oftentimes legal briefings about ongoing litigation are secret. So they wouldn't have been able to go out and share those publicly, and clearly they did not. And I would also say, you know who's not legislative staff from either party? You know who's not staff for the House or Senate Republicans? Let's Go Washington. So again, you're still dodging around my central point. You should have let Let's Go Washington know so they could inform voters. And then this is my favorite. He says, again, this is the Attorney General trying to convince us that this wasn't kept a secret. He says, one of the lead assistant attorney generals discussed this case at an education seminar for the Government Lawyers Bar Association in June. Okay. How many of us, Bob, do you think were at the this educational seminar for the Government Lawyers Bar Association in June? So he's just like desperate. He really is. He's on the defensive, and I never see him on the defensive like this. He's just throwing everything, seeing what sticks. Well, I told this person. We told this person. Well, we talked about it to the Government Lawyers Bar Association. But none of that addresses the fact that for some reason he opted never to put a press release out about the case to inform voters, and he opted not to pick up the phone and let Let's Go Washington know about it. And to me, I put out something in the show yesterday and on social media yesterday that's checkmate. Are the receipts proving that he didn't want to let these people know about it. And that's that in their own legal briefs to the state Supreme Court, they acknowledged that they knew Let's Go Washington had not received reasonable notice about the case from Defend Washington. So here they are in their own legal brief saying Defend Washington didn't tell relevant parties, including the initiative sponsors. Okay, so you knew that. Nothing stopped you from picking up the phone and making that reasonable notification yourself so that they could have a stake in the case, so that they could help defend the case. Because I wouldn't blame them for not believing Bob Ferguson could defend the case. He's opposed to the initiatives, and one of his campaign donors is funding the lawsuit against the initiatives that his office is defending. Now, I think the reason that Bob Ferguson didn't, make because he makes a big deal out of everything his office does. It's an election year, right? Oh, we're suing this person. We got money, this person. We're defending this. We're defending this. I think the reason he never said anything is actually very simple. The initiatives are not popular with his base. The initiatives are not popular with the state Democratic Party. I mean, after all, they tried to encourage harassment of signature gatherers. The Speaker of the House, a Democrat in Washington state, said she was saddened by the initiative process. So he didn't want to, when he's up for election, especially before the primary, when in the primary you need your base to come out for you, he didn't want to be seen as defending the initiatives, as defending these right-wing MAGA initiatives, which is the obligation that he had as the Attorney General and the attorney for the Secretary of State's office. But he didn't want that to be the public narrative because he didn't want to risk alienating his base when he's running for governor. So he kept quiet at the expense and in spite of 1.2 million people he's supposed to serve as AG and who he wants to serve as governor, who had a huge interest in knowing that there was a lawsuit threatening to derail the initiatives they had signed, volunteered for, or otherwise supported. And that is one of many, many examples of why Bob Ferguson is unfit to be the Attorney General, is unfit to be our next governor, and is unfit to be in any position of power. And I really believe that this is a scandal that's not going to go away like the other ones did so conveniently. We're not going to let it go away. And his own defensive posture shows he's concerned that it's not going to go away. So let's keep the pressure on.